Hello, I am Stephen Mallon, and welcome back to Refractions. I am very excited about our guest today. We are talking to Pallavi Kumar, who is an associate photo editor at Conde Nast Traveler. So, Pallavi, welcome so much. Welcome to Refractions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just off screen, can you tell us what your name means again? Because you just told us, and it's such a lovely description.
Yes, my name means a flower growing where nothing else will grow.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so pretty.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your job?
Yes, absolutely. So I am the associate visual director at Conde Nast Traveler, and I handle print and digital for the brand in the US. I work very closely with the photo director, the global photo director in the UK, and my counterpart, the photo director and global photo directors in the UK and the photo team there, and across the global markets of Traveler. So I handle print and digital here in the US, and that is the front of book for the magazine, also for productions, commissions, for digital. And I pretty much have a part to play in all of the processes, all the visual processes.
That's a lot.
That's
So
a lot.
and so it's a monthly, you're still doing monthly
So,
print, right?
so it's 8 issues a year, and 4 of
Eight.
those are double issues.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes.
And then are you pushing out stories that are also just going to digital in between the print edition?
Yes, absolutely. So for print, as I mentioned, there's 8 issues a year. And then for digital, there's about 8 daily stories. We do work with a visual digital editor who does those stories. And I come in more for the bigger packages and for the bigger features that go on digital. I also commission illustration for digital. So that is also part of my role. And we are, as I mentioned, we're a global team. So we all work between the different markets and share content between us. So.
Wow. So okay, and then do you have someone that's handling the social media, or does that fall into your lap as well?
No, so we have a dedicated, amazing social media and audience development team who handle all things social media. They do Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and visual strategy. So that is its entire a different entity.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like video podcasting, is that all separate
Yeah.
from photo still?
Yes, all of that is completely separate. So we're
Okay.
all different streams. We all, of course, interact with each other and we share different things with each other, but each sphere has its own team dedicated to it.
Very cool.
Yes.
So what is like a day in the life or a week in the life for you? Like what's a typical, workflow, and like how far off and not, I get so many questions about it. So just
Yes. No, I'd be so happy to share. So one thing that I love is every single day is so different, but usually it'll start off with meetings with the different editors, and we talk about what's happening in the current issue. We talk about once, the copy comes in, so the editor and I will sit together and we'll talk about what is the vision for the visuals of that piece. And then we talk about, how we approach it and what we'll do with it. So the mornings tend to be, or the earlier part of the day tends to be those conversations with the different editors, with the global visual teams. And then the rest of my day usually is spent in either researching. I do a lot of photo research, licensing from different agencies, from different photographers, depending on what story it is. I also do commissioning and production work globally, so that is also takes up a significant amount of time, and that's every aspect of production. And then if it is a digital feature, that also includes illustration, which I love, which is connecting different beautiful artists to the right piece. And so this tends to usually be my day. On top of that, I also handle all the budgets and negotiating rights with photographers and different creatives that we work with. So it really is every part of like the photo editing process for the brand.
wow.
Yeah.
And how far out are you producing the stories?
So the print magazine, we work 3 months out, and so that is our schedule. For digital, it can be a little bit shorter depending on what the project is and what the frame of a project is. For example, if there was one that is the bread project, which I love, which was published last year, which talked about sort of bread making traditions around the world in places like Brazil and Sri Lanka and the volcanic bread in Iceland. And so it was 8 different stories. And when we have a big project like that, then we need at least, I would say, 2-3 months to really be able to, do justice to it. And that is a mix of commissioning stories. It's also researching images from different sources. So that can take, I would say, about between 1 to 3 months is usually how far out we're working.
Okay. So that's a perfect, yeah, like with that story. So you're going through and you know that you want to like show some bread making in Indonesia, but you're not finding any stock that's like that you're like happy with or that's really working for the story. Is that the stage where you would start looking at possibly who to hire either locally or globally to send?
Yes, that's exactly it. So much of it depends also on budgets, as you know, for editorial. So budgets are a consideration. And so, at first we'd always look at what is already available out there, depending on what the budgets are. And each project has a different budget attached to it. So we'd really be mindful of that. And if there is, beautiful imagery already available and the place has been covered extensively, that then it's possible to license images. I also look at outtakes a lot and see if, like if there is a place that has been shot, like Gabriella had mentioned in her podcast too, like photographers will often go to a place and shoot things that are outside the scope of their project because of this reason. So I'll reach out often when I know a photographer's been somewhere. And for example, for the bread making, if I was looking for something in Brazil, I reach out to my network over there and I would say, do you know this place? And all of these things happen. And if it's really not available, then I would look at who is a good person to tell the story. What is their style of photography? Does it align with the other people who are also producing or, sharing images for this piece? Because one story can't look completely wildly different. It has to sit within the framework of the other pieces. So all of those considerations go in for sure. And then we would move on to if we are producing, commission shoot, we would do that then. And then that would be the frame of that story.
You mentioned your network in Brazil.
Yes.
So do you already have like, teams of photographers that either have been there or like based, in Brazil, in India, in Chicago? Like, do you have kind of like a list of a bunch of those locations?
I do. And I do sort of look at people who are closer to those locations just because of the wealth of knowledge that they might have of the place. And also, the voice matters and the story matters. And often again, like budgets, if someone's already based there, it is more feasible to be able to reach out to them. But I do have a roster of global photographers and people who are in certain places. I also keep an eye out, and I have always told photographers that I regularly work with or am interested in working with to please send me 3 times a year, just send me your locations, your upcoming travels, so that then I know when I do my searches that, okay, this person is going to be traveling here to Brazil, let's say, and in this month, and if it aligns with the timelines, then they can go and, take some frames for us. So that is also a way that works out.
And how are you keeping that organized? Like you've got 1,000 photographers sending your like their travel schedule to you. Like how would
So honestly, it's just I save it. It's just a lot of spreadsheets, to be honest, but I have a method now where I can search through location within this. I mean, that's a basic factor of the spreadsheet, but if I search through location and the minute they send it to me, I always tell them to send it to me about 3 times a year. So it's easy and it's just a copy paste. And then once it's in that document, then I don't even have to touch it. It's next to the person's name. And when I go and I look for Greece or Brazil, and all these things will pop up, and I'll see photographers who are based there, but photographers who are also traveling there or who have traveled there in the past. But the sheets are extensive. Yeah. Airtable's great too, and I recommend Airtable. I just haven't had a chance to fully port things to Airtable, but Airtable is my next big project of like keeping things organized and keeping photographers organized for myself.
What is Airtable?
Airtable is it's a way of just an organizational tool. It's like, I think if you've seen Monday.com, I think it's called. It's like a similar kind of filing system, and it helps to keep things organized. And there's lots of search factors. I really get into the process of it all, and so that's like a fun way to look at it. Airtable is great. We use it. I use it often to keep things organized for myself.
So you're going to start migrating that metadata and
I
the
know.
to
To Airtable. It's just going to be such a lot of work, so I'm slowly chipping away at it. But there's like hundreds of photographers on there, so it's great.
it's interesting and it's really smart, right? Because you get this team of photographers to send, locations that they're going to, and then even if the story doesn't pop up for a year, you'll know that they went there like last year, and so you can reach out and say, hey, did you shoot any material that either family travel, or is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly, that's exactly right. And that is how it works. I always, once I have that information saved in there, even if I have a story coming up, I already know that this person went to Brazil, even if it was a few years ago. And if I want just a beautiful shot of Rio, this happened recently. There's this wonderful photographer who's her name is Marta Tucci, and she's based in Rio. And we, like I needed some images from her. And immediately I know that this is someone I can reach out to, someone who's been there. So it really works out. I know Gabriela is from, Brazil, and I know that she's been in Brazil before. So I already have like a network of people. And another place I really, really look into is Instagram. And Instagram is fantastic. And, even when I'm scrolling, which is all the time, I will just, if I think a shot is beautiful, and, since we are talking about Brazil, I'll just save it in my Brazil folder. And then when a story comes up, or in a beaches folder, and then when a story comes up, I go back and I already have a visual reference point of a photographer who's been there, a photograph I like of that place. So Instagram has been a really useful resource in finding photographers and finding images. It's been super helpful for me.
Are you searching by hashtag?
I'm searching by hashtag, but I also look at agencies. I look at agencies a lot for photographers. I also look at other journals. I look at travel editorials. I look at other travel accounts, and I look at people that the photographer I like. I look at the ones that are similar to those photographers as well. And that's been good too, because then you get to find so many different styles. And what's really fascinating with that, with travel photography, as travel photographers have to be really great at a number of things. One story could be more focused on architecture or design. Another one could be more about chefs and portraits. Another one could be more landscape and like beaches or about nature. And so a lot of photographers we work with have to be able to do all of those things at a very high level. So, Instagram is such a great place to look for people. And in fact, I have a really good story for that too. In March 2022, Yellowstone had its 150th anniversary. It was a 150-year anniversary of Yellowstone. And we were doing this, beautiful feature. And I was doing all of this research for images, and I came across this photographer, Chris Poplawski, on Instagram. I think his handle is Chris Romes. And he had this stunning shot of Yellowstone, and that became the cover of the magazine.
Wow.
Yeah, from Instagram.
From Instagram.
From Instagram. So I always tell, I don't think it was published. He hadn't published it, but I knew he shot there, and that's how I found him. And so when we were talking, he shared this beautiful body of work, and it's stunning, and it was the cover of the magazine. So Instagram's great. I always tell photographers to have their work on Instagram. It's so easy to see, it's so easily accessible. So yeah, it's a great tool.
You mentioned a little bit about working with agencies, or agents and agencies. Are you talking about the stock libraries or individual like reps and their collections?
I'm talking about both. So we work with the gallery stock, with the trunk archive, of course, Getty and Alamy, and but also with like art and commerce, art department, with, you know, DS reps. There's so many different agencies and photo agencies globally. And I would, you know, reach out to them, and I keep an eye on them to see the new photographers on their roster. And that's often, you know, the way to also find people. So yeah, I'm looking across everything.
And let's say like you run dry, like nothing is out there, time is constrained and everything. Is that, you know, would you go to an illustrator? Would you consider AI to handle like, you know, for the final art, not for the comp, but like what would you do if you're just not finding something and the time is too tight to send someone out to shoot it?
So that's a really great question. When that does happen, I think very early on when I'm reading the copy, it'll become very clear if something's going to be a challenge or not. Just because of the nature of the work, when I am reading the copy, it's going to be so clear whether it's a Christmas story in New York and I know there's enough out there, I don't have to worry about having to shoot this. But if it is a location where I know that, you know, perhaps this location has been a bit of a challenge in the past, then I would, from the outset, keep that in mind, and I would give myself a very short time to say, if nothing comes by this date, then we're just going to have to figure it out. And
Okay.
we do that often. Also, it's very rare that something will be so specific that we won't be able to, you know, come up with an image that is, you know, illustrative of the point of the story. I think illustration comes in more when it's to do with a more personal experience of someone, where then, you know, somebody talks about something that's very personal. I'll give you an example of that. There's our, you know, someone on our team, her name's Jessica Chappell. She's an editor, and she talked about, you know, her travel to Puerto Rico, where her father was from, and how she traveled to this beautiful place after her father passed away. And it's such a touching and beautiful, deep, thoughtful, emotional piece. And we had to have an illustration, because for that, you can't have like a beautiful picture of a beach and have it be representative of what the piece is about. So in those cases, definitely an illustration is, you know, what we would go for to really do justice to it. But otherwise, I try to know very early on that something's really, you know, this is going to be hard. We have to find a way to shoot it. Yeah.
That makes sense. And so, I mean, I feel like travel photography is like one of the things that a lot of photographers, you know, dream about doing. You know, it's like at the early stages, even, you know, long term or whatever, you know, it's like it's a dream job, like these travel assignments, you know, this National Geographic, you know, or they want to go celebrity or they want to go fashion. Like those are kind of like the three, like, you know, draw points that I hear from younger photographers out the gate. And what I'm always saying to the students and people that I meet at the portfolio reviews is like, find a travel story that is like close to you that you can, you know, build out as like, you know, go shoot the hotel, shoot the chef, shoot the food, shoot the couple, you know, even if it's just Jersey Shore, Coney Island, you know, if you're in New York, like find something you can create. Has that been good advice? I guess that's
Very
the
good
question.
advice. Absolutely. I think exactly what you're saying. And I know like it exactly what you're saying, which is so important, that if your body of work is what everyone wants to see. And there's definitely been times where I've looked at, you know, someone's work and thought, oh my God, I really want to work with this person. And I can tell that, you know, when the right story comes along, that this is someone I would love to collaborate with. And that always comes from something I've seen of their work. I think it's less about the clients that they've worked with and less about, you know, like the agencies they're with. And it's definitely more about visual storytelling, and how is someone able to have a distinct style and be able to tell a story. Conde Nast Traveler is so much about an educated, international, culturally sensitive person who travels the world. So that's the audience. And, you know, I'm always looking for people who are able to highlight what is the best about a place, because that is what the brand is about. It is about inviting people to visit these places and talking about and highlighting the best of these places and the people and the culture. So when a photographer can really do that well and tell that story, I think that's just the best thing. And then there'll always be, you know, places where we can then collaborate with them. So that is something I always look for
Nice.
sure.
And just jump into the photo editor, and like I say, this is kind of a dream job for a lot of people. So how long have you been doing it, and how did you end up at Conde Nast?
I have been at Traveler since 2020, and I have been with Conde Nast, I think, for over 10 years now. I want to say 10, 12 years now, which is wild. I started as an intern at Vogue India, and I studied fine art and photography before that, and I really wanted to be part of, the amazing things that were happening with Vogue India, with the photography and the fashion. And I did that, and I did everything I could to learn at the photo desk. So I was an intern, an archivist, production assistant. I refused to leave. I was like, I'm going to learn everything. I'm going to do everything at the photo desk. And I did. And then I was with GQ for some time. I came out for a little while. I was with a tech startup called Culture Trip. And I did a lot of global commissioning there. And that's what really led to my role here at Traveler. And you're so right. It is such a dream job. I love it. It's every single day is completely different. And I get to work with such amazing travel photographers who are an amazing team, people to work with. They're like traveling all the time and so enthusiastic. And it doesn't even feel like I'm working sometimes, which is, I think, such a dream. But totally. And I've lived in a lot of different countries myself. I've moved around every 3 years when we were growing up. So I've lived in India, in Dubai, in Hong Kong. I studied in the UK, then I moved back to India, and now I live in New York. So travel has been just such a massive part of my life. So this is the perfect fit for me.
It sounds like it. Yeah, it's kind of mirroring your past experience, and now you're producing the story. So it just
Yeah,
makes sense.
truly.
Um, and are you shooting it all for the magazine as well? Do they allow that? Do they ask for that, or?
Definitely they allow it, and they, sometimes will ask for it, but I've been so focused on production that I haven't thought about shooting in so long. If something came up that I was really passionate about, I'd be so happy to shoot it. But for now, I've just been so focused on production. So yeah, not much shooting.
I mean, I feel it's good because it's a great opportunity, but there's also a certain amount of pressure then for you to be doing both jobs at once.
Exactly. And I also think there's such great storytellers, and my mind automatically will go to, I'll read some copy and, I'll think of which photographer has shot here. So even though the opportunity would be there, it's just not something that happens too often. So, if I was really passionate about it, I'm sure that it would be a possibility and, welcome. But production is the main passion, I think, right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been working for over a decade, and like, what are some of the like skills that, if you, for like a up and coming photo editor, not the travel photographer, but somebody that would be interested in kind of following your path, like what are some things you think they should be doing?
Do you mean for an editor, like a magazine, like for,
Editorial, yeah.
sure.
Editorial and travel. I mean, whatever. Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I think one thing that's always helped is those connections are so important to be able to have a roster of photographers. Not that they have to have been in touch with you, but even knowing the kind of photographers that are out there and doing that kind of research. And that's so easy for someone who, you open any print magazine of Traveler and look at the well features and look at the photographers that are shooting, follow them on Instagram. Who else do they shoot for? What are the agencies they're connected to? And this, I know, like, connections are everything, relationships are everything. I would really say, for a photo editor to be able to have those connections is so important. To be able to have a network is so important. And that comes over time. I completely understand that's not something someone would have early on. But I think more than that, like, the deadlines are serious. And I think sometimes people, when they come in and they're new, that's something that I always look at. And it reminds me of myself, because those deadlines are serious, because the print magazine is going to go out on this day. And if that photo is not in there, you cannot send it with a gray box, and that's your responsibility. So the pressure's on, and there's a lot of teams. So the ability to work with different ideas, different teams. The people communicate differently. People have different expectations, different styles of working, and you have to be able to navigate all of that professionally while maintaining relationships and collaborate. It can be, it takes a lot of thought, I think. So that's always something that I say. And this is true for photographers too, but it's a big industry, but it's a small world, and everyone knows everyone eventually. So it's always good to like have that reputation of being easy to work with and being responsible and respectful. And I think that's true for all of us. So yeah, those are definitely things that I would say. Yeah.
What are some things that photographers need to be prepared for on travel assignments? Like, I mean, my mind is kind of jumping to like, what could possibly go wrong? And I'm just thinking about weather. I'm thinking about flat tire. I'm thinking about cabs. I'm thinking about sickness, like what are, what are your photographers, I guess, responsible for
Mhm.
within that kind of scope of the deadline? It's like they fly out to Indonesia and it's raining for 3 days and
Yeah.
they're only there for 4. Like you know, what are they expected to do?
They have to figure it out. To be honest, we have to, because if they've flown to Indonesia, you have to find a break, or it's okay, make it a rainy story. Like, as we know, as visual people, there will be a break in the rain and the light will be beautiful, because direct light is not ideal anyway. And you have to figure it out. You have to get the equipment and you have to make it look a certain way. So I think those are things they are definitely responsible for. But what I will say is that when we are producing those shoots, and the shoots are produced, like led by the global photo director in the UK, and I do all the production here for the US. But when we talk about the photographer and when we are setting those timelines, we'll make sure that we are helping the photographer in every way possible, that the seasonality is right, that the conditions are ideal for them. We set up everything. Where are they going to stay? I arrange the entire production itinerary for them. They know exactly what they're expected to shoot. They're connected with everyone that they're going to meet. And, so they're coming in absolutely supported and fully, ready and with a complete understanding of what's expected of them. So those things are, they'll go into it and they will know exactly what they're in for. But yes, things like that do happen. Touch wood, it hasn't happened in a long time that I've had to deal with. Oh my God, they've gone there and something's just, not worked out. Always there's ways to kind of work around it. Yes, sometimes someone might not be available. But for example, this recently happened where a photographer was supposed to shoot 5 restaurants, and then he got there and 3 of them, there was some issues and the people weren't available. He wasn't there for too long. But he got beautiful portraits at the other places. He got lots of food at the other places. And then he did exteriors and he did whatever he could with what was available to him. And we still created the story and it was still beautiful. So we understand. And at that point, it's, definitely not to the photographer's responsibility if someone's not available or something's not working out. But mostly we try to make sure that we get what we need.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're also, you're a photo editor, but you're also a producer,
Yes.
right? Like you're
Yeah.
helping find the locations, the hotels. Are
Yeah.
you booking the crew, sometimes like if you've got a UK photographer coming, are you finding like local assistants and everything for them? Or is it kind of like depending on like, you know, who and where they are, if they're busy and they're like, I can come shoot this, but you need to arrange X, Y, and Z and that I can be there.
Yes.
Does that
All of
happen?
that, definitely. That happens in-house, and we have like a travel desk. We have like an entire system that's dedicated to all kinds of travel, sort of those travel details. What I would handle would be the actual itinerary and when are they shooting what are they expected to shoot at each place. So very much like that part of those aspects of it. But where are they going to stay, the transport and things is all taken care of by the company as well, but just in a different way of we have a dedicated team, thankfully, who is excellent and handles all of those details. So
Good.
yeah,
And how many shoots do you have going on like simultaneously?
it can be a lot. I have at the moment I'm working on, I think 3 shoots for print. And I'm also doing 2 massive features for digital, but it can be different depending on what time of year it is. This tends to be a little more busy because we have single issues coming up. When it's double issues, we have more production time, so that helps to ease up the production work as well. And then there's also features will be produced seasonally sometimes. So let's say we're doing a winter story in New York. We would have to shoot it during the winter time in New York. So the story would be greenlit, but we'll shoot it now, but it might not get published till next year in the summer. So those things are also factors to consider, but at any time it can be anywhere between like 1 or 2 to like 5 shoots and things at a time. But it's fun, and there's like, luckily I'm not doing it alone at all. It's very much a team effort. So it's a small but very mighty team.
Um, yeah, I'm thinking about having 5 shoots going on at once, and it's like I can usually handle, I think, about 3. And 5 might be a challenge.
It can be intense, but I think there's, luckily the shoots are also of different scales. So not everything's going to be like a 10-page multi-feature shoot. And, one could be like a double page, which is more the front of book. And that's, someone going out and shooting a city or a neighborhood. So there's different scales for everything for sure. I definitely think if it was 5 massive feature shoots, that would be very hard to handle.
For sure.
Yeah.
And in regards to budget,
Yes.
like I feel like back, things were kind of like, less funded if it was digital only, but it has such a reach that, it's almost, potential that, like, because it can go viral, it can get shared, all these, like digital stories may potentially actually get in front of more people these days. Are the budgets, kind of more similar, or
The budgets, to be honest, I think that is a little hard to answer because every project is so different and different projects have different budgets allocated to them. There are definitely certain digital features that do get bigger budgets as well. And sometimes when it comes to things like sponsored content and, like editorial, certain packages which get, have more budget backing them, then that can be different. But yes, in general, I do believe print has, more budget allocated to it. But these days it's really hard to say, now that I say that digital also has like a higher budget. So I don't think that's as crazy, but what I will say is that the budgets are definitely not what they used to be across print and digital. And the budgets have suffered. I think now when I hear stories of like these amazing budgets where there was like caviar on set and people were being flown across the world, I'm like, I wish I was a photo editor during that time. That would have been such a fun time. And like there were entire teams being flown across. That doesn't happen anymore at all across the board. So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the good old days.
The good old days. I've only heard about them. That's been like all of this lore and fantasy tales, but yeah, it's definitely not like that anymore.
You mentioned sponsored content.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
So mainly it'll be, if I'm not as involved in it at the moment, but it'll be, let's say if there's a content being sponsored by a cruise line, then they might ask us to do a story, based on their cruise line and things like that. So just different entities or hotel companies will come in, or different sponsors will come in, and it's all editorial content where we still completely have it's all editorial, and we would make all the decisions are made in-house, but the sponsored elements come in from those entities.
So like a cruise line would potentially say, hey, we have got this new cruise or new ship.
Mhm.
So they're not buying ad space, but
They're not.
is that editorial? Is that like, I mean, they're paying, is the photographer, I guess, like, is the photographer getting an editorial rate, or is it a higher
They would
price
get
point on that?
they would get a higher fee in that case if it was a sponsored content. But again, for example, a cruise line might say, here, we're doing this cruise, and these are the places we're going to go, and we would love for your company to highlight this trip. And so we would then go in and shoot that as more of a with a bigger budget. And that's how that's how that would work. We would still, have our writers, we would still have our photographer, all the creative decisions would be made as we would make them, but the backing comes from the cruise line.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I guess that's the separation between like the advertising and editorials, because the editorial is up to you about where you're approaching and covering the
Yes,
story.
exactly. Even with the sponsored content, all the decisions would be made completely by the editorial team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, we want you to do this hotel or boat or airplane.
Mhm.
Go have fun.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it.
Just need Richard Branson to give us the keys to a couple of planes and a boat, and we'll be fine.
Yes, why not? That sounds awesome.
So what would be like a dream assignment that you haven't done yet?
A dream assignment that I haven't done yet. I think what would be a dream assignment? I was going to say that every assignment is a dream so far. And I will say it's so incredible to be able to see these amazing stories that come together from all of these places. I think the most recent one that happened, I know when I think about what hasn't happened, it's hard because so much of travel and so much of what we do is really, as I mentioned, the best in travel. So it's like the best places to go to eat, or the people or the culture, and those kinds of assignments that really are so interesting and to go through. And recently we had one in Philadelphia where I didn't know, and that was very new. I think it just got published, I think, in the last issue or the issue before. And it talked about the diverse food scene in Philadelphia. And I really didn't know about that, even though it's so close to where we are in New York. And that was a dream assignment for me when I read the copy. And I just thought, wow, I had no idea of all these amazing things happening in Philadelphia. There's like all these bakeries and like people, this sushi chef, and someone talked about Abyssinia, which is this incredible place to eat. And so I was like, this is happening in Philadelphia. And once I saw the photos come out and the food looks so amazing. So that's actually one of the places I'm visiting soon because I was so just inspired by that story. So those are really the kinds of things I think that are dream assignments. But then all assignments are kind of dream assignments here. So I love them. I love working on them.
Oh, that's great. So like, doesn't sound like there's any, specific location missing, because you get to keep on just finding out all these, even like you said, like these niche areas. Philly is what, like 2 hours away from New York? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
far, but there's this whole other, community and culture in there that we, haven't explored. You haven't explored. I haven't explored. I mean, I worked there, but all I remember are the cheesesteaks. So
Yeah. That's another reason I want to go. I think it sounds fascinating.
that's awesome. So we're almost out of time. This has been fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? I feel like we covered everything that I wanted to
Yeah.
find out about.
I can't believe we're almost at time. This has been so wonderful talking to you. I feel like time has just flown past. But the only thing I will say that I don't know if I mentioned is I always say to, photographers I'm talking to or photo editors that are coming up or are interested in the field is that, going to photo meetups and joining, going to like societies or going to photo reviews is just so important. Like being able to put your work out there and connect with people can be so important. And also just not to be afraid to just really put yourself out there. I did that all the time. Like I remember when I was an intern and I just went and I said, I'm really going to do everything I can to be here and to learn what I can. And I wasn't afraid to reach out to people. I'm still not. And I've made some of my best connections that way. I found some amazing mentors in the same way where I've reached out to people and I've said, I really love the work that you're doing. I know you must be super busy, but I would love to, just, hear your thoughts on this, or I would love to get your advice on this. And people are, I've realized more often than not, so willing to help and so willing to have a conversation. And I think being able to take advantage of that is so important. So that would be the only other thing that I would want to add. But
Thanks for saying that. That's so true. And I completely support, yeah, the community and the portfolio reviews and all aspects of that. Are you going to the reviews? Are you getting asked? Are you able to go down to like
yes, definitely. I do the ones with, I think it's PhotoWorks. I've done that before. And of course, SDP, Society, as SPD, sorry, Society of Publication Designers. I do their reviews a lot. And I've actually met some great photographers that I've commissioned, that I've worked with, licensed from through some of those reviews. So I definitely make it a point to do that. And they have some great happy hours, I know, here in like New York and in LA. And they're so fun. And everyone comes, people come from their photo editors, art directors, photographers, artists, everyone shows up in, you know, a place in New York and like talks photo things. It's amazing. So fun.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful chatting with you about your experience and working. And I'm so happy for you. It sounds like you've got an absolute dream job. And I'm gonna start looking at a lot more of your stories and watching everything you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so wonderful to talk about. And it's also been, sometimes we're just so in the details with the things that we do, but I feel so happy that we've had this conversation. It's reminded me why I'm doing what I'm doing. So thank you so much.
That's very nice to say. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. So thank you. We're off. Where'd it go?